And if you draw a complete blank, it happens. What next?
Wow, okay. Yeah. I mean, I'd probably start by...
That's a task I'd actually love to get.
Yesterday was all about interview nerves. And once those nerves are managed, the next challenge is knowing what to actually do in the room. Today is about simple, practical tactics that help you think clearly and respond with confidence.
We've got lots of great stuff to cover today, so let's get straight into it. Here's something that, as interview candidates, we don't see. No matter how unexpected a question feels in that room or awkward, it's always trying to find out just one of three things about you. First, does the person have the knowledge we need? Second, do they have the skills to do the job? And finally, do they behave in a way that fits how we work? Knowledge, skills, behaviour. Every single question, however it's dressed up, lands in one of those three buckets. Maybe some questions address two or more at once, but generally it's one of those three. What I'm about to tell you now really matters. The employer isn't actually interested in what you did brilliantly somewhere else. What they're asking is this: what can you do for them? This means every answer you give about a past achievement must be seen through the lens of how you'll do it for them. In every answer, your goal is to make that connection explicit. Now, we've already released a dedicated video on the STAR method for behavioral questions, the "Tell us about a time when" format. Our advice is to turn STAR into ROUSE. Result, action, outcome, situation. Go and watch that one if you haven't already. Today we're covering the full picture and the tactics that work across all three question types. Knowledge questions sound like this. What do you know about the challenges facing our sector right now? Or how would you approach building a performance framework from scratch? They're testing whether your brain contains what they actually need. Their objective here is be specific but efficient. Vague answers signal surface knowledge. Specific answers that don't ramble signal depth. And depth signals readiness. What would happen when David and Gabby get the same question?
What do you understand about the key marketing challenges businesses like ours are facing right now?
Yeah, so I keep up with what's happening in the industry. I read the trade press, follow a few thought leaders on LinkedIn. It's a really exciting time for marketing. Lots of change happening. I've got a pretty good handle on the landscape.
The shift I'm watching most closely is the scramble for first-party data now that third-party cookies are effectively gone. Brands that relied on easy retargeting are having to completely rethink audience building, and the ones doing it well are investing heavily into owned channels and CRM. From what I've seen of your recent campaigns, that tension is playing out in your space too. I'd be really interested to hear how you're approaching it.
Same question, completely different impression. David gave the interviewer nothing to work with. Gabby gave them a reason to keep listening, and then invited a conversation. That last move, turning it back to them with a specific observation, makes it powerful. Now, what if a knowledge question lands and your mind goes blank? This is where buying time becomes a tactic in itself. You have one shot at it per interview, so use it wisely. Option 1. Lead with a brief compliment and give yourself a breath. That's a great question. Let me take a moment to give you the best answer I can. It reads as measured, not lost. But only once. Twice and it sounds like a script. Option 2. Reframe the question back in your own words. Not a parrot repeat, a genuine reframe. So, you're essentially asking how I'd approach automation given the current context around AI. This shows logical thinking and buys you 5 to 10 seconds to organize your thoughts. Option 3, and this one is underused. Redirect to what you can answer. I can't give you precise figures on that right now, but what I can tell you is how I'd go about finding them. Interviewers respect intellectual honesty far more than blagging. And always close the loop. Don't just demonstrate knowledge in the abstract. End with, which is exactly why I think this organization is the right place to apply it. You've proved the knowledge. Now prove the fit. Skills questions are the practical ones. Walk me through how you'd build a campaign from a standing start with a limited budget. They want your method, not a list of things you've done. In panic mode, we default to narrating our past experiences, but there's a significant difference between I've run lots of campaigns and actually walking someone through exactly how you think.
How would you approach prioritizing your marketing activity if budgets were cut significantly mid-year?
Yeah, I've definitely dealt with budget cuts before. In my last role, we had a big cut come through and I had to make some tough decisions. I managed to keep things going and we still hit most of our targets. It's tough, but you get used to it.
My first move would be to go back to the data and rank every activity by cost per acquisition or cost per lead, whatever metric most directly connects to revenue for the business. Anything that can't demonstrate a clear return gets paused first, not cut permanently, because you want to be able to reinstate quickly when budgets recover. I'd then protect brand activity at a minimum viable level, because going to zero spend has long-tail costs that are hard to recover from. Can I ask, is that a scenario you're navigating right now, or more of a contingency question?
David told them he'd done it and then defensively closes the question off as done. Gabby showed them how she'd do it and then invites an open follow-up. She's genuinely keen to know more, sending a signal she belongs here. It gives the interviewer a perspective on how she'd operate in role. The best interviews feel like extensions of a regular professional conversation. Behavioral questions are the ones that feel most personal, because they are. Tell me about a time you had a difficult relationship with a colleague. Describe a situation where you got something seriously wrong. They're not being nosy. They're trying to predict how you'll behave under conditions they know are coming. As we said, for the classic, tell us about a time when structure, our arouse video is your reference, but behavior questions come in other forms too. Hypotheticals. What would you do if a campaign you'd backed was clearly underperforming? Values-based. What does good leadership look like to you? David and Gabby, how do you actually show up?
What does good leadership look like to you?
I think good leadership is about being, supportive and being clear about what you want from people. I've always tried to lead by example and make sure the team feels motivated. Communication is really key as well, just keeping everyone on the same page.
My instinct is that good leadership starts with knowing the difference between what people need to achieve versus how they achieve it, and giving genuine autonomy on the latter. That means I'm quite direct about outcomes and hands-off about process, unless someone asks for support or I can see something going off track. I'll be honest, I've had to adjust that style when working with less experienced teams, where people want more structure than I naturally give. Flexibility is probably the most important leadership skill I've developed.
David gave a string of adjectives. Gabby gave them a philosophy, an honest admission, and a hook for a follow-up question, which is exactly what you want. A good answer is a behavior question that isn't the end of the conversation. It's the beginning of one that separates candidates who get offers from those who don't. And it's not talent, it's preparation. But not the kind of preparation most people do. Most people try to predict questions and rehearse specific answers. That's a trap. You'll always get something you didn't expect. And when you do, that rehearsed answer is useless. Instead, prepare answers based on your strongest material and practice making them flexible enough to serve multiple questions. You might have a brilliant example from your last role about rescuing an underperforming campaign. That story can answer a skills question about problem solving. It can answer a behavior question about resilience. Or it can answer a values question about accountability. One example, 3, 4, 5 different questions it can serve. Here's what that looks like in practice. David and Gabby asked the same question neither of them saw coming.
If you were standing in this role on Monday and your first task was to justify the entire marketing budget to the board in 30 days, how would you approach that?
Wow, okay. I'd probably start by looking at what's already in place and then maybe put together some kind of report. I'd want to speak to the team first and understand what's been working. I'd need a bit of time to get my head around all the data. It depends a lot on what systems you've got, I suppose. I'd definitely want to make sure I understood the full picture before saying anything to the board.
That's a task I'd actually love to get. My answer to the board would be built around 3 things: what we spent, what it generated, and where the gaps between the two sit. I did something similar in my last role when a new CFO came in and wanted to challenge every line of the marketing budget. I built a model that mapped every spend category to a revenue outcome, directly where we could, attributed where we couldn't, and honest about what was brand investment with a longer payback horizon. The board responded well to the transparency. I'd want to do something similar here, obviously shaped by what I find in the first 2 weeks. What does the current reporting framework look like?
David hadn't prepared for that question, and it showed. Gabby hadn't either, but here's the difference. Gabby had prepared a strong example about a data-driven case for marketing spend. She simply adapted it for a different scenario. She didn't know the question, but she knew in the moment that her making a case for spend scenario fitted perfectly. You see what else she did? She'd love to get that task. That's a behavior all employers love: ownership. Could they put David in front of the board with the same level of confidence? Certainly not. Master these techniques and I can practically guarantee your next interview will go your way.
A big part of interview tension is the preparation. Tactics don't replace preparation, they support it. When you know how to respond under pressure, interviews stop feeling unpredictable and start feeling manageable.